So, Dr. Barzilai, welcome to the show. With such an illustrious career, can we start with you taking us back to sharing and talking to the audience about your background?
Uh, my background is that I was a child once. And as a child, I really was boggled by my grandparents who, what happened to them? And what does it mean to me? Am I going to be old like them? And while my friends were like, we don't know what happened to our grandparents, we don't know what they're coming from, for me, it was like, whoa, this is like you cannot show me something more biologically interesting of how we grow up and we go old and what is it about. And I went to medical school and I learned that you can take a blood test and you can see what's your glucose level and what's your cholesterol level. But and it's important. But you take me to a movie theater and I go in and I look at everyone, and I don't know who has high glucose or high cholesterol, but I know who's young and who's old. That was a major thing. And then I went to my residency, and there was a an attending that whenever I presented a case, he would stop me. I would say, "This is a 70-year-old woman," and he said, "Yeah, just a minute. Does she look younger or older than her age?" And you find out that it matters. It matters because some people age slow and some people age fast. And in fact, that's the only hope I had. If that's the case, and we all know that's the case because you guys have grandparents, right? Or
Mhm.
parents, and they're friends. And you know that some of them are rapidly aging and some of them are doing really fine. So there's a flexibility that if we can understand, maybe we can apply. And that's where we are now. Uh, and it matters in the hospital because sometimes 70-year-old people have all system fucked up and they're just they're not going to do well. And you have 90 years old that maybe are sick now, you give them a little antibiotics, they go and they'll be fine.
hmm Yeah, I mean, so I have a question about your background. I saw you served as a chief medic in the Israeli forces, so I was wondering what you learned from your experience in the army, I guess.
Well, look, the main thing is, and everything, you have to know that everything you ask when people are coming, when young people are coming to consult with me, what should I do, right? I, I tell them, okay, I'll tell you what I would do so we can take it off the table and tell you what you should do. And I'm saying it just because my experience in the army was one of the most important for my life, and I'll tell you why. But it doesn't mean that you should go to the army and have the same experience, okay?
Yeah.
But for me, the army was important because the army, you get into the army and you're nothing. You're nothing. There's a guy 3 months older than you that tells you when to brush your teeth and when to go and where to walk and what to do. And 3 years later, 3 years later, I had an office, I had a secretary, I had a car, I did inspections, flying with helicopters. It's a whole lifetime in 3 years. You go from nothing and you're like, when again will I have driver and helicopter, right? In my life. Um, and so why is it important? Because it's generic. I left Israel when I was 34 years and I came here as a new immigrant. And because of my army, I wasn't fearing anything. I was like, I know how it works. Okay. I know what it takes to make it happen. And in this sense, it was very good. It enhanced my ability to do things rather than delayed it because I spent years in an army.
Yeah, so you know why I asked that? I had a guest who also served in the Israeli army. I don't know, his name is Dr. Schlesinger from Yale. I don't know if you know him.
I know of him, but I don't know him.
Yeah, so he also
Schlesinger.
served in the
Yeah.
army, and
Yeah.
why I asked because he also had a good experience, and the way he talked was also very, I guess, cool. Because no, because like I've like family friends who also served in the army in America, and they told me like they learned a lot of stuff. So that's why I asked you.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, let's talk more about your other research. So for the audience, can you explain the longevity genes project, like how you kind of thought of it?
Sure. When I got to do research, what I've done in my lab, what everybody, and when I say everybody, I don't know, there were five people who were doing aging research, but what we did is we took animals, mice or rats. Actually, people studied flies and nematodes and that are worms and spiders. And what we do, we take a group and divide them to two. Okay, one group eat whatever they want, and the other group is calorically restricted. In the sense, in our rats, for example, we gave them 60% of what their brothers ate. Okay, and we always got, at least in those models, we always got the same results. They lived healthier and they lived longer. Okay. In other words, our our quest was for things that made us live healthier and longer. And in humans, when I came in, there was a very famous guy, a colleague died not long ago in an old age, George Martin, and he was interested in a variety of diseases that's called progeria, where people are aging faster. So actually, the model in humans were people who are aging faster rather than people who are aging slower. And so I came and I said, hey, why don't we do the opposite? Why don't we go to people who age slower and see maybe they have something, some biology that slows their aging? And so I started collecting those 100 years old. There are lots of other consideration of what had happened, but I started those 100 years old. Before I'm telling you about the research, I want to tell you something really important because with 100 years old, really the questions that was in the back of my mind all the time is, okay, we all started getting disease on age 60. We get one disease and a
Mhm.
second disease, and now we have two treatments and third, and that's how it goes. Did the centenarians just live sick for longer rather than live healthy for longer, right? And we published the answer, and we published the answer also with another group, so it's not us only. But our centenarians got sick 30 years later than people who lived at the same cohort at the same time. And not only that, so they live longer, they live healthier, but they have another thing. They have what we call a contraction of morbidity. In other words, they're sick very little time at the end of their lives. The CDC, the Center for Disease Control, may it rest in peace or be resurrected, maybe. They looked at the medical cost in the last 2 years of life of somebody who died at 100. And the costs were third. The medical costs were third of those who were sick or died in their 70s. And we started talking about the longevity dividend, which means really how profitable it is if we can be healthy. Because healthcare is the major cause, it's the biggest bucket of our economy. Um, and by the way, what I told you is with the CDC, the medical costs means okay, they were not in the hospital. But if they were not in the hospital, where were they? They were traveling and they were shopping. They had economical value that when you calculate the economical value, it's trillions and it's actually the number is $36 trillion a year if we get extension of 1 year of health. So this is why we started centenarian, and that's why we're sure that those centenarians are a really good example for somebody who lives healthier for longer, uh, and that we can calculate the benefit for the economy.
Okay, yeah. So you found from that project the high levels of HDL. So can you might explain what it is?
Well, what we found was several genes that were commonly not genes, it's really um, uh, we found genetic changes in existing genes. It's not that those people have genes that other have not, but they had some changes in those genes. Some, we call them SNPs or variants. Let's call it variants. Some variants that were different than other people. And when we tested them in the lab or we tested their biology, they were associated with longevity. Two of those genes, their names is CTP and ApoC3. I don't think we have to go through that. Are their biology is associated with higher HDL level, which is the good cholesterol, and lower triglycerides level. And I think it's important because those two genes are also were picked up by pharmacy and there are drugs that target that. Because the thing with centenarians is centenarians are one of 10,000. So why is it important for me to know what happens to one of 10,000? Or is it important when you don't have this genotype? So too bad. Well, no, the thing is that the genetic research finds mechanism, and when you find the mechanism, you can develop drugs that will do exactly that. Not by genetic way, just develop drugs that can target the same mechanism. So
Hmm.
this is the genetic finding, the phenotype, what we call the phenotype, what can be measured to show that they're really working, and the fact that they're drugs that people who don't have those variants can take, and maybe it'll slow their aging.
I see. Yeah. So, from that study, you studied the many of the superagers. You studied they smoked, they drank. Some of them didn't really do much, like, go out and play some sports. So, what does that mean? Like, so does that mean that like having the genes plays like a huge role in living longer?
Exactly. And I want to start by saying for all of us, or most of us, or 99.9% of us, we shouldn't be obese. We should be exercising, right? We should be dieting. And for them, it happens that it didn't matter. I mean, I have a woman who smoked for 95 years. She lived to be 110. If you
Dang.
ask her why did she live so long? She says, because I smoked. Uh, so so it's not really it's not really a lesson for us. It just shows you that we were right to take centenarians in the sense that it's genetics. For them, it's genetics and not really environmental. It's probably both, but I think with environment, you can get to the age of 90, but to get to the age of 100, you need more.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and for like aging, do you think stress just plays a role in aging? I mean, I don't know if you heard with Nick Lane. He wrote a book and he said like, oh, stress and like plays a role in like aging. So do you think maybe like having less stress for those centenarians played a role in like being able to
Um,
live to 100?
okay, this is a complicated answer, and it'll take me time to answer that. Okay. Um, So, first of all, the stress that ages people is chronic stress.
Mm.
Is like if you have pain, really hard pain, and there's nothing that helps that, this will age you. Okay. On the other hand, stress that comes in time or intermittent might not only age you, but will be the opposite. We called it hormesis. Sometimes stress is important to increase your ability to fight stress, which will increase your ability to be better when you age.
Mm.
Okay? It works that way. I give as an example a stress like that, it's actually exercise. Exercise almost makes no sense. It increases oxidative stress, and lots of people are taking antioxidants. Okay. It also, you know, There damage to the muscle, there's inflammation. Okay, there's a lot of things that happen with exercise, but yet when you do bouts of exercise, it's really good for you. Okay. And lastly, I'll give you an example of our centenarians. You started, our centenarians have less stress. I had an uncle who died last year at age 102. Okay. My uncle, when he was 17 years old, basically he lived in Europe and he was taken by the Nazis to concentration camp. The way that he said it, the Nazis gave me the full tour. I was in 5 concentration camps and they paid for everything. Not enough food, okay? But you can imagine that being in a concentration camp is very stressful. And then he recovered, he went back. My grandfather also survived somehow, sent him to medical school. Medical school is stressful too. And after medical school, he stayed in Prague. He was in Prague. And in 1968, the Russians invaded Czechoslovakia. The Russians have been doing it for a while, not only in Ukraine. They invaded Czechoslovakia because Czechoslovakia became liberal democracy. Uh, but the communist ruled, so they had to invade Czechoslovakia. So my uncle was a refugee. That's stressful. He fled at night to Austria. The Austrian didn't allow him to stay, so he had to escape again to Canada. He went to Quebec. In Quebec, the separatists were blowing houses not far from where they lived. So he left that and went again and went to Houston. In Houston, he lost and built 2 houses after hurricane. Okay? Imagine how many real disasters he had in his life and still got to the age of 102. So I think that's an example of also hormesis, right? That what doesn't kill you make you stronger. You know, the song, of course, the song is written by the survivors. You don't know how many died, but what doesn't kill you make you stronger. So the stress, my point is, stress is really complicated just to give as a title. Okay, that's how science is generally.
Yeah, let's talk more about metformin. So I know you're the lead investigator for that trial. So can you explain why you wanted to use a 60-year-old diabetes drug to, I guess, classify aging as like a treatable condition?
No, no. What I want to talk is there are 4 drugs. Metformin is also very old. So I will start with metformin just because you introduce it as diabetes drug, but actually the history of metformin is the opposite. It was an aging drug. In the 1920s and
Oh,
1950s, it was used for osteoarthritis, to prevent flu, you know, malaria, many other things. And when people used it in Europe, they noticed that people with diabetes had lower glucose. And so it was hijacked to diabetes.
okay.
Um, and in diabetes, people notice that if you're on metformin versus other drugs, you have less cardiovascular disease, you have less cancers, you have less cognitive decline, you die less. Okay. And that's where we resurrected metformin from being a diabetic drug to be an aging or also an aging drug. In fact, metformin now has been repurposed to for obesity, to prevent diabetes, um, to macular degeneration. It's the first drug of choice for COVID because people who take metformin when they have COVID have half the hospitalization and death and 60% less long COVID. Okay. Um, PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, is metformin. So metformin has this huge effect on biology that's relevant for aging and other diseases. But there are 3 other drugs that are doing the same. And in clinical studies, they've showed that although you give them for one disease, they actually prevent other diseases. that although you give them to one disease, they also prevent not the disease specific mortality, but the overall mortality of that. Um, so, and by the way, those drugs are, I'm telling not the not the names, but the larger name are GLP-1 agonists like
Hmm.
Ozempic and Manjaro, SGLT2 inhibitors like Farxiga, and biphosphonates that are antiosporotic drugs like zoleronic acid.
Mm. So yeah, so I have a question about GLP-1. You're because you're also a doctor, so I see like on the streets like they're selling those like GLP-1 like Wegovy's like I guess injections where people can just inject it. So I know you previously mentioned that we should go out more, take a walk or something. Do you think like right now people are like over relying on these like GLPs to like lose weight?
Um, So you're right. I'm a physician. I'm in fact endocrinologist, and my specialty is diabetes. And at least once a month, I'm on a diabetes clinic, and I've treated people with GLP-1 for more than 10 years. Okay, so I really know the literature. I know a lot about them, and they're definitely what we call a gerotherapeutic. It's not only anti-diabetes, it's not only anti-obesity. They protect from a lot of things. By the way, obesity itself drives aging. Okay, so it protects from other things. Um, Now, in clinic, we for 30 years now, when we have a diabetic patient, we tell them first thing, you have to diet, okay, and to lose weight, to eat the right thing, and to exercise. You want to guess how many people come 3 months later and did any one of those?
I don't know, but I'm
Yeah,
assuming not
I hope
many.
you don't know. Just pick a number.
Maybe only like one or two actually try to, be more
Yeah, less
healthier.
than 3%. You're right. I hope you said maybe only 50, but yeah, less than 3%. Um, it's very hard. It's very hard for a doctor to tell patients do something and the patients will do it because it's very hard to do. Okay? Those drugs actually allow you to do that. And in part, they're treating obesity that drives aging, but in part, they have their own effects. If you put GLP-1 in cells, in old cells, they'll make the cells younger. If you give it to animals that are not obese, in those that doesn't change their weight, they would live longer. Okay? So those drugs are really gerotherapeutics or anti-aging drugs. And I think that they should be used. Now, every drug ever invented will save 100 and will kill 3. Maybe the numbers are wrong. Okay. This is what we happen. We have to be better at choosing the 100 and preventing the 3. Um, and yeah, GLP-1 has side effects. Okay. And but still the drug is important. So you have to decide if you take a GLP-1 and you have constipation, well, there are other things that can help constipation. Do you want to really stop GLP-1? Okay, when your health is going to improve so remarkably. People on GLP-1 have more uh, heartburns. Okay, there Tums. You can take Tums or something stronger than that. Every one of the drug metformin has side effects. It's not for everyone. GLP-1, there are people who get rash immediately. Okay, there are those people, but they cannot overwhelm the system. And a drug that has been so unbelievable important in preventing aging and its diseases, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, kidney diseases. Okay, they're doing all of that, and that's the fact. The rest is how do you implement it.
Yeah. So, I know you talked about, people should go out to have a better diet. So you probably heard like I think Trump has a new like food pyramid. So I was wondering, about that food pyramid. if that food pyramid is actually gonna allow everybody to at least have a balanced diet.
Well, Trump's it was this week, RFK this week
Yeah, the
decided
food pyramid were to like kind of
that
reverse it or
it's
something.
upside down, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I want to say a few things about diet. First of all, just like drugs, it's very individual. Okay. So let's say, what's your diet? Do you have any particular dietary restriction?
No, no.
Okay. So I would suggest the following. If you decide to be vegetarian, okay, in 3 months, you are likely to become more obese. A lot of people who become vegetarian, instead of the proteins that they had, are taking more carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are fattening. And obesity, as I said, accelerates aging. So if that happens, it doesn't happen for everyone. I mean, vegetarians are generally, not every, by the way, 20% of vegetarians are obese, but vegetarians are usually lean, okay? But I bet with you that there's a lot of people who will turn to be vegetarians, weren't born with that, didn't practice that, and it's going to be the opposite. The second thing I would say is, and with that I agree, I think we've victimized beef. Look, the fact that in our evolution we start eating meat, okay, have changed our evolution significantly because then our brains became bigger, our muscles became bigger. It was a totally positive effect. And to just say now that meat is really bad for you, okay, to the degree that you need zero, I think is a big mistake. Okay, a big mistake. uh, I do try to eat red meat once a week. I don't want to do it more, maybe, but I think I think that the diets are extreme, and the diet are not good for everyone. I would tell you also, for me, what changed my health so significantly is since 2019, I'm intermittently fasting. Okay, if I finished dinner uh, at 8 p.m. last night, by the way, now it's afternoon here. So I'm 16 hours, will be for half an hour more. And then I'll go and have lunch. It'll be 17 and a half hours.
Mm.
It's easy to do. It's good biologically. There are studies that shows that you get benefits, but it's not for everyone. In fact, if you want, I lost weight, not just because, I didn't try. I'm sure I ate less, but I didn't try. At least it's not that the breakfast that I missed, I ate in addition in the 8 hours I was eating. Okay. So I lost weight. Women lose less weight than men. I don't know if it really is relevant for the aging benefits, but it seems there's going to be a gender effect here. And there are some people who just cannot say. They said, no, no, my sugar is too low in the morning. Okay, we cannot do it. So not everybody can. It's the rule of 103. Not everybody can do it, but a lot of people will find that doing that is really good.
I see. So yeah, I have another question. So does having like a young mindset or staying like socially active like change the biological markers in our blood to be like more younger, I guess, in a way?
Well, we know in human studies, and I've seen some presentation just recently in the New York Academy of Medicine. um, Social connectivity, I'm calling it social connectivity, but it's more than that. It's um, has been linked to diseases and mortality very significantly. You take elderly people and you take them to art school or to tours or to other things, their health is improving dramatically. So we have evidence that social connectivity is important. The evidence is better in humans than in animals.
Yeah, so now I want to talk about your company, Kobar. So you're developing mitochondria-based therapeutics. So like, I mean, this is very interesting because, I've interviewed a lot of, professors and doctors who have startups, but none of them have really explored like, but this type of therapeutic. So like, what got you interested in this?
Well, let me change the question a little bit because we exited Kobar. Okay, so
Oh,
Kobar is not there now, but um, I've been I'm one of the executive of the Longevity Biotech Association. Is biotechs that their purpose is to develop drugs that will change the face of aging. Okay, and some of those biotechs are really uh, targeting the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse, right? I'm telling those companies you shouldn't advertise this as biotech, but as a utility company. Okay, you have energy production. Okay, you don't need to go to Venezuela. We can do it in your body. So I'll give you an example of what excites me. There are companies that are actually targeting mitochondria to be more efficient. But even more interesting is a company that actually takes mitochondria out of your own cells and expand the number of mitochondria and then giving you a lot of mitochondria back. You know, what happened in evolution, there was a mitochondria which was actually a bacteria. Okay, mitochondria is actually a bacteria. It's an ancient bacteria. And there were cells. And the cells were really pathetic because they had energy only from glycolysis. It's not much energy. They're exposed to oxygen that is really toxic. And the mitochondria went into the cells and they had this collaboration where the mitochondria protects them against oxygen, uses the oxygen for energy, and we're really a great miracle. But the point is, uh, if you wonder how does the mitochondria get into cells, that's what happened millions of years ago in evolution. And the problem was technically how to get enough mitochondria in order to bring it back. And I think I'm excited about event like this where either targeting the mitochondria or improving the mitochondria is going to face the phase of aging where you started to see that you don't have enough energy.
Yeah. So I have another question. I know like longevity is like a big thing, especially for the Silicon Valley people. If you look like Jeff Bezos has his own like longevity company, a lot of those other, I guess, Silicon Valley people, they're like promoting like longevity. It's like a fountain of youth where you could like decrease aging, become younger. I mean, do you think that's factually correct? Because I've interviewed some other, I guess, professors who were in aging and they said that it's like the billionaires that what they're promoting may not be like what they're promoting is not like correct technically.
There are a lot in your question. So let me start. I'm the president of the Academy of the people who are doing research in biology of aging. Okay. It's called the Academy of Health and Lifespan Research. And we're so excited about the progress we made in the field. But we're really worried about the noise. And the noise seems 10 times more than the progress.
Hmm.
And some of those people who are coming out and by the way, they have a belief. It's a belief. It's like believing in God, believe that they can live forever or that it's possible. Okay. And they'll try to do something about it and they think that money will get them that. This is not science. In fact, those people sometimes are saying it's science because I'm studying myself, but science is not about n equal one. Okay? You can learn about you, and it works only for you, and not for others. So this is not science. So I agree. There's lots of people there that are making a lot of noise and picking people sometimes picking the noise as the truth. But by the way, the most dangerous thing is the drugs that we're talking about are effective when you start the breakdown of aging over the age of 50. If you're younger and you take those drugs, they can be not only not good, but bad for you. Okay? So, so a lot of noise and lots of unsupervised noise. Um, that is a different question than can we make you younger? And I'll tell you, there's going to be an X prize. There's an X prize. There's funding for $110 million or so for groups who will, in 1 year, make you 20 years younger than your age, based on variety of clinical parameters. Okay? Will they be successful in 1 year to do 20 years? Probably not, but who cares? They'll make you younger. Okay? Um, the biggest project I'm involved now is a project where that is paid for the government from the government now, where we're taking um, samples of blood from studies in the drugs I mentioned before and more that have been in the studies you showed that you defended several age-related diseases, right? So we have all those drugs, and we're going to do what we call omics. We're going to measure everything in those plasma and see what has changed in less than a year of therapy. Okay? What we're calling it is biomarkers of aging. And each drug is going to change its own biomarker, but together in the middle, they're going to change in common biomarkers of aging. And this development of biomarkers of aging, and they're, by the way, they're biomarkers now to tell you what's your biological age, but they're not necessarily change with treatment. You want to have somebody who comes to the clinic and you say, you know, aging is accelerated, so you have to exercise and maybe you have to take metformin. And that in 3 months, you come and make a blood test. Just like you do if you have high cholesterol, you get a treatment and you have 3 months later a blood test, and the blood test will say that you're younger by 2 years. Okay? Biologically younger by 2 years. So yeah, the interesting thing is that you can target aging and you can change the aging biologically, and there'll be a number for that, and the number will mean something, just like the cholesterol. Look, you lower cholesterol, you lower heart disease by 30%. Okay, but you didn't prevent heart attacks by 100%, right? So those numbers will be meaningful and will be used, and it will accelerate what we're doing.
Yeah, so one last question. Is there any type of advice you would give to like young students who are like very passionate about science or like they want to be a doctor? So what advice?
Um, so I think we talked about it before, in the sense that I can give you what worked for me and take it off the table, which I did already, and I don't know if it works for you. I will tell you that some of the reasons it's hard for me to do is because even in my lab, I don't understand all the technology we're using. Okay, if I'm using AI, it's not me. When we're doing studies where there are omics, I'm not the one who's analyzing that. So to tell you that what I did is important for me now, no, probably not. You have to see where the science is going, and the science is going through technology, okay, mainly, and through AI. And those are strengths that if you have are really going to be very good for you.
Yeah,
I would,
and is there anything else that you want to talk about that we
yeah,
never
yeah.
mentioned?
I want to say a few things, but just to finish the question before, um, my life has been objectively, I guess, successful. Okay. Um, but what people don't realize that my life was about rejections. Okay, I wrote drugs and the drug grants, and the grants were rejected. And And sometimes it's insulting, and you say the reviewers were stupid. Why didn't they understand what I said, or they don't understand? And you can do it for 24 hours and then you move in, because you have to understand that it's about rejection, but you'll prevail if you're smart and understand how to correct it and go on. Okay? Not everyone is built for rejection, and then you shouldn't be in academia. Okay? But you have to know it's rejection, and you cannot take it personally. You should look at it as a way to advance. And sometimes it's the Nobel Prize people who were rejected all the time. I had two colleagues who were my instructors in biology when I was in medical school, and they got Nobel Prize, and their articles, they had, like 50 articles in minor journals because nobody picked up on how important is what they were doing. Okay, but you just have to do what you can do and move on. Um, as for other things I wanted to say, I just want to say that this is not only about aging, or old people. People who we treat with chemotherapy and radiation are aging. Okay, kids who are cancer survivors are aging even faster. They get heart attacks when they are 35. People with HIV are getting diseases 10 years before their cohort. People who are disabled are aging. Poor people are aging. In every city in the world, the rich live 30 years longer than the poor. Um, Also, if we go to Mars, so we need more. We need aging for other reasons. If we go to Mars, we need to solve aging because we'll never get to Mars because of cosmic radiation without diseases, and we'll never make it back. Um, Down syndrome needs treatment. That's an aging syndrome. Um, um, Vegetable, we want to increase the lifespan, the shelf time of vegetables and fruits. Aging research. Okay, so aging research is crucial for the world, for the diseases for we have, for the strategies we're going to have. It's important for everyone, and I hope that a lot of listeners will come now that we're still kind of pioneering the field and join us in our revolution. And our revolution is to treat your health rather than treat your diseases. We don't want to get diseases, we want to stay healthy.
Yeah, so just want to say thank you very much. I think we all learned a lot about aging in this talk. So yeah, thank you very much.